So good morning. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me to this TEDx. So I'll start my story many years back. I think the year was year 2000. I think 24 years back, I was probably 24 years old. And it was a beautiful October morning, and I was sitting in an aircraft, wearing parachute, very nervous, my heart beating against my chest and adrenaline surging through my veins. And there's a red light, just like the glow that we see here inside the aircraft. It's an indicator that we'll be soon reaching our drop zone and preparing for a training jump. So let me just try to see the clicker. And this is a picture from back then. We are all wearing our parachutes before the jump. So as the aircraft gets closer to the drop zone and the aircraft ram door opens at 4,000 feet, cold air rushes inside the fuselage, and you can barely hear yourself over the sound of the roaring engines. And you can feel a mix of nervousness, excitement surging through your veins, and that experience or that feeling is very difficult to describe. Soon we are over the drop zone, and the red light turns to green and the jump master says go. So I stand up, take a step and a deep breath, and leap out of the aircraft. So the feeling of falling through the air in more than 180 kilometers per hour is beyond description. And those few moments, adrenal fuel moments, are brought to an abrupt stop when the parachute opens. And you quickly check your surroundings, check your equipment, and start steering your parachute towards your landing zone. And as I get closer to the earth and I prepare for the landing, and I suddenly look up and see there is another parachute heading towards me, and I quickly urge that paratrooper to steer away from me because we were in a collision course. But due to strong wind that day, he's pushed inside my parachute, and within seconds, both of us are entangled in the sky. And we are at a very low altitude, around 200 meters, so it's very difficult to disengage and take safety measures. And this is a similar scenario where we are tangled and heading towards the earth. And after crossing 200 meters, you only have few more seconds left in your hand, and we could not do anything to ourselves other than brace for impact. So we were crashing down, and I could see the earth rushing towards me. And at that point, I just waited for the inevitable. So I hit the ground, and I could feel searing pain through my body, like 1,000-volt electricity passing. So that fall had broken 3 of my vertebrae, and the bone fragments went through my spinal cord and also tore through a lot of nerves and left me paralyzed, partially paralyzed in my right leg. So I ended up in the hospital, lying in the hospital bed. I was just staring at a very stark future, because I was immobile, I could not move, and things were very uncertain. And back then in Bangladesh, this sort of accident, surgery, recovery were not very much possible because of lack of medical facilities. So I was lying in the bed almost for 3 months because I could not sit up, I could not stand up. A spinal cord injury has left me immobile, and the doctors were very concerned that what will be my state, because I could not stand up, I could not walk, and they were not very hopeful about the future. But I went through numerous hours of physiotherapy, a lot of strength training, just to regain some strength. Almost after 3 months, I was able to sit up again in my bed. That helped me to use a wheelchair. And those were very dark days. You can very well imagine how you would feel being a very active person to become immobile and being stuck in the bed. and not sure what will happen to your future. So it was not only about my physical, but also my profession. Everything was at stake. And I was trying to figure out what will be my next step. But I did not give up hope. I always pushed on, tried my best to get out of the time that I was going through. A lot of physiotherapy sessions, a lot of exercise, a lot of support from the colleagues that I had. I was able to move from the wheelchair to 2 crutches, then to single crutch. And it was an spectacular feat for myself, that simple act of standing on your 2 feet, that was possible after 9 months. But the injury that I suffered was not something that I could bear with, especially when you're in the army. So I had to think about the future and decide what to do with myself. And just like the title of my topic today, that this is not for you, and that's what doctors say, that this is not for you. But me being myself, I decided, okay, I have to restart and find what is the next best of course for me. So I moved on with my life, moved on with my career, and but something I always had in my heart was that I always pursued a little bit of adventure, a little bit of sports, which I always missed in my life. So with a little bit of stubbornness that I always have and a lot of training, I slowly picked up running again. That was almost after 10 years, but not without a lot of pain and discomfort, because the disability I had is a permanent disability in my right leg, and that limits a lot of my movements. But nevertheless, despite the pain, despite the challenges I had, I pursued my my passion in sports, and I moved on. I started with small runs. I started participating in small running events and slowly pushed my limit. And I think it was in 2018, and when everybody said this is not for you, I did something again, that I registered for the first Ironman race. Those who have heard about the Ironman, it's a triathlon which requires one to do 3.8 kilometer swimming, then they would do 180 kilometer cycling, and they have to do a 42 kilometer run, all subsequently one after another, and you get 17 hours to finish it. So I decided to go for the Ironman race, and the first one I did was in Malaysia. Definitely this is a race which requires a lot of physical and mental endurance, and I trained a lot for it. And as they said, this is not for you, but I took up the challenge and I crossed the finish line for the first time. But this is something, But in subsequent years, I did 3 more Ironman races. I did the Bangla Channel swim, where you swim from Teknaf to St. Martin. Also did an extreme triathlon. But there was one particular race I always wanted to participate, which is called the Norseman. And the Norseman race, which takes place in Norway, is considered the ultimate triathlon race. Because it happens in a very cold environment. It's a very inhospitable terrain through mountains and a lot of elevation, a lot of climbing, and it's very difficult. And every year they only allow 250 people to participate in that race. So in 2024, I was very lucky to find my position as a participant in that race, and I was training to go to Norway. And something that struck me, the tagline for this race is called "This is not for you." So I think that stuck to my mind, that I can relate it to my own life, because the race, the challenges it poses is very similar to what I've experienced in my life, where the challenge seems impossible, but then you have to gather whatever you have, push your limits, and see what lies end of the road. And I took the challenge. And I trained for 6 months, rain or shine. Especially you can imagine that when you're coming from a country like Bangladesh, which is very hot, which is flat, there is no mountain, there's no cold weather, cold water. It's very difficult. You can do a lot of training, but the weather and the climate is something that you cannot replicate here. But I tried my best, considering the limitations. There will be limitations. I knew that there will be challenges, physical challenges due to my injury, and also logistics challenges, because traveling all the way from Bangladesh to Norway and arranging this race itself is a feat itself. But nevertheless, I managed to be there. And the way the race happens is that you jump off a ferry into the sea and you swim 3.8 kilometers. Then you have to do a 180-kilometer cycle through the mountains with elevation up to 3,800 meters. And then you have to run a full marathon. That is another 42.2 kilometers, which ends on the top of the mountain. And you get around 20 hours to complete the full race. So fast forward to the race day, 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm standing in the ferry, I think, and with 250 other athletes. It's dark, sun is yet to rise, you're just staring at the black, dark, cold waters and hear the waves splashing as the ferry. And then suddenly I traveled back many years to the moment where I was making my own parachute jump, and the voice in my head was saying, this is not for you. But nevertheless, the time came and I took a jump into the water. When you hit the water, you can feel the cold water hit you with it feels like thousands of needles are entering through your body. Cold water cramped my legs. I kept swimming and crossed the 3.8 kilometer and reached the shore. But the hardest part started after that with the cycling, because you do this is a scene from the ferry. You can see the athletes are standing near the ferry, and this you jump into the water and start swimming. And you will not imagine how cold it is, because in the surface it was around 6-7 degrees, and in the water it was around 10 degrees. So that's how cold it was. This is not something we are very much used to from Bangladesh, but nevertheless it was very hard. So managed to cross the swimming distance, went up to the shore, then went for the cycling. So we did the cycling 180 kilometers. It's difficult because I have an injured leg that kind of gives up halfway through. But I managed to finish the cycle within the 12 hours cut-off time, that when you start, within 12 hours you have to finish the cycling. Managed to get off the cycle and start the run. And calling it a run is a very generous title, because the whole run happens in the mountain, and you go with 11% gradient, you go to the top of the mountain. I had 8 hours to finish the run, and soon the sun had set, and we are climbing the mountain. It's totally dark. You can imagine that you are only seeing your path in the starlight, and you have a headlamp in front of you to see where you're heading. After almost, I think, I was very close to 19 hours, and I can feel my body shutting down and not able to push myself through this. But I took 1 kilometer at a time, and it's a time where your mind goes over your body. Your body stops, so your mind keeps on pushing you to go to the finish line. And you can see I'm climbing up, and there's the mountain at the distance, and the race finished at the top of the mountain. And it was raining, it was very cold, and I was extremely exhausted. And after long 19 hours of racing, I reached the finish line and heard the long cherished word that Imtiaz Ilahi from Bangladesh, you are a Norseman. So this is the picture from the finish line, and being the first Bangladeshi to complete Norseman is not only my personal achievement. I think that this achievement belongs to the endurance sports community of Bangladesh, who had been extremely generous and helpful in helping me reach to the start line of this race. And I hope this will inspire athletes of the future generation to take up challenges and not be afraid of the adversity that life brings in front of you. In that case, all my effort, my journey will be meaningful. And before I leave, I want to leave a message that don't be afraid to restart. That can be your career, it can be your dream. Your life will take you down. You will be derailed, you will be lost, but that restart or the new beginning has all the potential to have a better story than what you have left behind. So don't be afraid to restart, and don't be afraid to take the challenges of life. And the way it's said in the Norseman, this is not for you, I think life also has its way of telling you this is not for you. And it also wants you to prove that it is for you with your effort, your perseverance, and your hard work. Thank you.